Atlanta, where the Braves out.
Don't think you need a sign for that, do you?
No. It's targeted for some people. That's our report for now. We'll be back at 6.
Thanks for joining us. Good night.
The Supreme Court bans abortion clinic blockades. The government authorizes use of unproven AIDS drugs. And an EPA report links electromagnetic fields and cancer. This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rattle reporting. Good evening. The U.S. Supreme Court approved new limits today on protest by anti-abortion groups. Justices upheld a permanent ban on demonstrators who physically try to block entrances to abortion clinics. Today's ruling was on a case from New York, but it's expected to affect anti-abortion groups using similar tactics nationwide. CBS News law correspondent Rita Braver has our report.
The Supreme Court action is bad news for Operation Rescue, the group that has staged hundreds of controversial abortion clinic blockades nationwide. Abortion rights advocates call it a victory for them.
Operation Rescue and its followers have every right to disapprove of abortion, but they have no right to block access to a healthcare facility.
Don't kill your baby, lady! Please don't! The protesters claim they are exercising their First Amendment rights of free speech, but many local courts have ruled that the demonstrators are trespassing on private property and harassing patients.
It is very wearing to every day have to walk through a group of very obnoxious, crazy people who are very hostile and hateful to you, and having to deal with the women who are coming in crying, who are coming in indignant.
Last week, the court voted 5-4 to allow a temporary ban against Operation Rescue to stand in Atlanta. But today's action is considered even more significant because it involves a permanent ban and could have an impact on similar cases now underway in other states. Nevertheless, the leader of Operation Rescue claims that his organization will continue its aggressive protests, whether they're legal or not.
We have a moral obligation to rescue babies from murder. As Americans, we're blessed with many choices, but the right to kill our offspring and murder our children is not one of them. So whether this court says we can save babies or not, we've got to save babies.
Pro-choice groups, however, say that today's Supreme Court action could encourage local authorities to impose stricter penalties on anti-abortion activists who engage in extreme forms of protest. Rita Braver, CBS News, Washington.
AIDS activists targeted the U.S. government's research headquarters today, asking wider and faster testing of AIDS-fighting drugs. Even as police were making arrests, the government announced a significant change in policy. More on this from CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer.
Mounted police and others wearing rubber gloves confronted about 1,000 AIDS activists this morning at the National Institutes of Health, home of government research on AIDS. Police arrested 81, many for occupying the Office of AIDS Drug Development, which protesters said doesn't live up to its name.
The bottleneck is human testing, human trials. They're just not testing enough of the promising new drugs and getting them out the door.
The process does not work. The process stinks.
Although the timing may have been accidental, today the government proposed changing the process. Under a new system, AIDS patients who either can't take conventional drugs or who have run out of options would be allowed to use unapproved experimental drugs before tests even show they work.
The people who will benefit the most are people who are most severely affected by the disease.
It's a very important signal to the community that the federal government is serious about AIDS research and very serious about getting experimental treatments to people who need them as quickly as possible.
NIH officials say there are at least a dozen drugs that soon may qualify for use under the new system, but they don't expect that to quiet critics.
If you're sick or you're dying or you have a loved one that's sick or dying, there is no such a thing as fast enough. Fast enough means when you have all of the answers.
The new policy means that even without all the answers, the government finally has agreed with AIDS activists that patients with so little to lose have a right to take unproven drugs as long as they understand the risks. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
New and troubling evidence tonight in the decade-long debate about whether the electric power lines and electric machines all around us may pose a health risk. CBS News has obtained a draft study by the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the EPA, not yet made public. It says there is evidence the risk is real. Deborah Potter has details.
It's produced by everything from power lines to computer terminals, an invisible electromagnetic field that may be a health hazard.
There is pretty persuasive evidence that exposure to power, frequency, electric, and magnetic fields can produce changes in biological systems.
CBS News has learned that the federal government is now taking that evidence seriously. A draft report by the Environmental Protection Agency concludes that there is a link between electromagnetic fields and cancer in humans. The report cites recent studies of telephone workers and children living near power lines who suffered significantly higher rates of cancer. The Rausch family lost their son Will to a brain tumor.
We realized that the school he had attended for 2.5 years did have power lines running by it. Yes, Jared?
I don't understand what to do here.
Now his mother Sharon is teaching her other children at home in Boca Raton, Florida.
What we don't know about electromagnetic fields may be killing us.
School officials insist there's no danger, but part of the school is now off limits under a judge's ruling that it's too close to the power lines. Florida is the only state in the country so far to have exposure guidelines for EMF, but already there's talk in Congress of setting a national limit.
This is not something that a bunch of crazies are concocting. I mean, this is a real concern, and we're talking about human health.
Most EMF research has focused on power lines, but concern about the effects of exposure to other sources already has prompted the redesign of some products to lower EMF, including IBM computers and Northern Electric blankets. While admitting there is cause for concern, the utility industry says there's no need to panic, and certainly no reason to take action now, like reinstalling lines to cancel out EMF.
We spent billions of dollars rephasing every line across America. And then we found out 3 or 4 years from now that, in fact, we should have been spending the billions of dollars doing something else, and we would have a problem.
We need to get some high-quality science done and get some of these issues resolved.
In an unusual move, the new EPA report does not rate the risk of getting cancer from EMF. Sources say that lower-level staffers considered it serious enough to warrant immediate action, but they were overruled. For now, experts recommend avoiding as much exposure as possible, a tall order in today's wired-up world. Deborah Potter, CBS News, Washington.
Straight ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, James Hattori on the wild weather in the South and Southwest, and Bob McNamara on the men who collect the wire that tamed the West.
If your American Express traveler's checks are lost or stolen, just phone and your refund can be delivered virtually anywhere.
So you, hon?
Take only American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them.
I thought you wanted to impress me. Cereal these days needs accessories. You know, fancy fruit shapes, matching textured things. Well, this isn't dressed up at all. It's just flakes. Maybe I was wrong. Yes, I like it. It's simple, classic. Makes a bold statement all by itself.
Kellogg's Corn Flakes.
Corn Flakes?
Taste them again for the first time.
Ever find this in your freezer? What is it? How long's it been there? It won't confess. I'm a chicken from last May. That's why I love the new Right on Labels on Ziploc freezer bags. If I want a mystery, I'll read Sherlock Holmes.
Put your trust in a Ziploc bag.
More weather in a moment.
This is one of 570 million refund locations for American Express traveler's checks. Just phone, you can get a refund hand delivered virtually anywhere.
Is that you, hon?
Don't let anything ruin your vacation. Take only American Express traveler's checks. Don't leave home without them.
A Palestinian man got onto a tour bus in Amman, Jordan today and opened fire with a pistol. 9 French tourists were wounded. Jordanian police said the man was out to avenge the murders of 7 Palestinians yesterday by an Israeli man in the Israeli-occupied Gaza Strip. From Israel, Bob Simon reports on the day after the Gaza massacre.
The Israeli command put out the fires of Gaza with a blanket of troops today, doubling its forces in the Strip, shutting it off and closing it down. The only pedestrians were soldiers walking through the wasteland. The only vehicles, ambulances, and jeeps. In a phenomenon reminiscent of so many wars, the army controlled the main roads, the Palestinians ruled the alleys. But the Israeli commander of Gaza said this battle was over.
We dominate all the area, and there is still no problem.
But in other places, refugee camps and Palestinian towns were coming alive again in what often seems to be the only way they know how. Some of the angriest rioting was not in Gaza or the West Bank, but right in the center of Israel. This confrontation between Israelis and Arabs, for example, is unfolding a couple of miles from the smart suburbs of Tel Aviv. The barrels never stopped blaring in Arab villages which had hardly heard trouble before. In Nazareth, an Israeli struck a statuesque pose on a pedestal in what appeared to be an old and tired drama, a rerun of the opening night of the uprising 29 months ago. The same sets and costumes, the same players, the same passion. The passion which Israelis believed had abated, but which was stirred into life again by yesterday's mad mass murder. The 21-year-old confessed killer, an Israeli who'd been dishonorably discharged from the army, was remanded in custody today in chains and unrepentant. Israel's leaders insisted he had committed an insane and isolated act, and that the violence it engendered would soon pass.
I think it's a matter of a few days, and the situation will come back to normal.
But demonstrators outside Shamir's house claimed it's the bloodshed which is normal when there's no political settlement.
I think it really shows again the real absolute urgency of us sitting down to speak peace to the Arabs.
The army canceled some training exercises today to be ready for future incidents. In Jerusalem, Israelis and Palestinians were still locked in a familiar and fatal embrace, as if nothing had changed in 2.5 years. Bob Simon, CBS News, Taipei, Israel.
4 more black people died today in a South African mining town where police have been unable to stem a racial war. It's a conflict that threatens to derail the government's plan for ending white minority rule and sharing power with blacks. Richard Wagner is our man in South Africa.
At sunrise, the black township of Tabong, next to the city of Welkom, was still out of control. Police reinforcements were brought in to halt the violence, but the best they could do was contain it, surround it, as the fires of black rage burned to ashes.
During the day, the authorities set up roadblocks and restricted access to the township of Tabong. What was happening inside was meant to stay inside.
Food merchants unloaded their goods on the township's borders. Any vehicle entering Tabong was a target today. This is the kind of violence many South Africans fear may spread throughout the country. It's the struggle at its roots, black versus white. The white Afrikaners, who have dominated this gold mining territory for decades, are not about to concede political power to the black majority.
If the ANC come to town, I'm telling you there'll be a lot of bloodshed.
F.W. de Klerk may have freed Nelson Mandela, but the Afrikaners of Welkom have other ideas.
There'll be a war in South Africa. There'll be the bloodiest war ever in South Africa. We won't allow the blacks to rule us.
Welkom's white supremacists today used the funeral of a white mine worker killed by blacks last week to make a political statement. This essentially uncontrollable violence has South Africa's political thinkers desperate to find measures to reach accommodation between blacks and whites here.
The society could blow apart if institutions are not built quickly enough to regulate political conflict. And that's the race. Can we build those institutions before the whole thing blows apart?
The institutions sought by the social planners, ways to promote racial tolerance, democracy, economic equality, are a long trek from the smoldering streets of this country's black ghettos. Richard Wagner, CBS News, Tabong.
Colombian drug criminals are being blamed today for escalating violence in that country in advance of Sunday's presidential election. A 16-year veteran of the Colombian Senate was assassinated today in the drug trafficking center of Medellin. Police also report finding a sack of loaded dynamite at a school attended by the grandchildren of Colombia's President Barco.
Crosswords and croissants mean Sunday breakfast at our house, complemented by the rich, fresh flavor of Sunsweet pitted prunes. Sunsweet, an 8-letter word that means delicious. Only one prune tastes unsweet.
Are your teeth sensitive? Do they hurt? Watch out for the domino effect. It could end in tooth loss. It's a chain reaction that can start with sensitive teeth. Then pain, which can make you stop brushing. That can lead to plaque buildup, gingivitis, periodontal disease, even tooth loss. Sensodyne helps stop the pain and the domino effect. Ask your dentist if you need Sensodyne, the toothpaste dentists recommend most for sensitive teeth. Help stop the pain and the domino effect with Sensodyne.
Most credit cards advance you cash, but then immediately take interest back and keep on taking it. But now you can get cash interest-free with your Discover card. Just pay your balance every month, and for a small transaction fee, we'll give you the cash interest-free. So take it from us, instead of giving it to them. It pays to Discover.
When you've got hemorrhoids, walking is hard. Sitting is worse. Anusol ointment has an anesthetic for the pain and itch. Does your brand? Anusol ointment has an anesthetic to take the hurt out of hemorrhoids.
A 6-hour hostage situation in a church in Melbourne Beach, Florida, ended today with police tear gassing the building. They say the gunman was found dead of a self-inflicted wound. A church deacon being held hostage was hospitalized with a leg wound. Earlier, the gunman shot and critically wounded a woman. The gunman was a member of the church, but there's no word on his motive. Parts of Indiana are suffering tonight from their worst flooding in more than 20 years. And flooding is only one of the natural disasters inflicted today on mid-America, as we hear from James Hattori.
Severe weather caused more headaches in the nation's heartland. Tornadoes roared through 2 Missouri trailer parks, injuring 11. Damage will exceed $2 million. Thunderstorms and 60-mile-per-hour winds added to the misery in flood-ravaged Arkansas this morning, knocking down trees and power lines in Little Rock. 50 miles southwest in Hot Springs, cleanup crews swept up the mud and debris after a weekend deluge sent a wall of water through the downtown area, forcing some residents to grab street signs and hold on for their lives. In Texas today, the Trinity River rose to a record high, 5.7 feet above flood stage. 41 counties have been declared disaster areas, as many as 4,600 houses affected. And after a week of uncertainty, Howard Pipkin's Island, which became a symbol of triumph over helplessness, met its fate today when the Trinity breached a 6-foot dike and rushed in his front door. Perhaps the least visible victim of the flood is the Galveston Bay oyster industry. The summer crop, worth as much as $10 million, is at risk because oysters can be ruined by an influx of fresh water. And the Trinity River empties right into prime oyster beds.
What happens is the oyster will go into a state of decomposition, and it will just sooner or later die.
It could be another week before the oysters begin deteriorating, but with fresh water continuing to pour into Galveston Bay, oyster farmers say their harvest is sure to suffer.
I think that we'll see some mortality from it based on how well the tides and winds hold the salt water from the Gulf in.
Oyster boats are working to harvest as quickly as possible for as long as health officials say it is safe. James Hattori, CBS News, Dickinson, Texas.
Jim Henson always wanted an upbeat memorial service, and that's what he got today at New York's Cathedral of St. John the Divine. 5,000 people crowded into the cathedral to mourn the puppet master who died last week. Near the front of the church were many of the Muppet characters, creations of Jim Henson's special genius.
The color of the leaves.
And maybe even you can believe in you too.
With lower back pain, every step can send more pain to your lower back. Clinically proven BackGuard shoe inserts can help relieve lower back pain because BackGuard absorbs jarring foot shock with every footstep you take. BackGuard, only from Dr. Scholl's.
Look, constipation is a pain, but try and tell someone, they'll say, take a laxative. Right, and hope it doesn't kick in on the way to the airport. Oh, I found a better way. Daily fiber therapy with Metamucil. Metamucil is soluble fiber, not a harsh chemical laxative. So it gives my body the extra fiber it needs every day to get regular and stay that way, safely and naturally. So, now when I have one for the road, it's Metamucil.
Metamucil.
and you could stay regular for the rest of your life.
If you want a Metamucil that's smoother tasting and mixes easier, get this one. Sugar-free orange Metamucil. Same grade fiber and a smooth, easy mixing formula. Sugar-free orange Metamucil with NutraSweet. What a smoothie.
This awful itch. Won't anything stop it fast?
Lanacaine will. Lanacaine shuts off the itch like a switch, instantly. Look, Benadryl can't. Cordaid can't. Hydrocortisones can't. Only Lanacaine cream actually quiets the itch nerves that cause every itch, instantly, on contact. So for the fastest relief of every itch, get Lanacaine.
Lanacaine does shut off the itch. Like a switch, instantly.
The newly elected president of Romania said today he hopes to put his nation into the ranks of the world's advanced countries by the end of the century. Former communist Ion Iliescu says he is looking now to follow the lead of socialist democracies such as Sweden. Iliescu won an overwhelming majority in yesterday's election, and his so-called National Salvation Front, largely made up of former communists who run the country, won control of the new Romanian parliament. Sources close to President Bush tell CBS News that the president will make his decision tonight on whether to renew China's most favored nation trade status. The president has hinted repeatedly that he favors maintaining the current relationship with China's old-line, hard-line communist leaders, despite the lack of progress on human rights in China. Those opposed contend that Mr. Bush's soft-line policy is a failure. Among other things, they point to the fate of China's leading dissident, who has been trapped for a year as a fugitive inside the U.S. Embassy in Beijing. John Sheehan has that story.
Dissident scientist Fang Lizhi is a symbol of repression in China. For nearly a year, Fang and his wife have been in hiding at the U.S. Embassy in Beijing, where they took refuge to escape arrest after the Tiananmen massacre. Today, fellow scholars from many countries came to their defense. Led by Soviet physicist Yuri Orlov, more than 200 international scientists and academics vowed in Washington to boycott conferences in China until Fang is free. Though he had no direct involvement in the pro-democracy protests, communist authorities staged counter-rallies at which Fang was burned in effigy.
Just ask human rights. This is quite basic. This means we ask freedom of speech, freedom of thinking, freedom of press, something like that.
But for Fang, the price of getting out of the embassy was too high. He rejected Chinese government demands that he write a confession admitting that he had incited students to rebel. He also refused to promise never again to criticize the communist system. His son is a graduate student in the United States.
My father has done nothing except to practice his freedom, his right. So he has nothing to confess.
In the meantime, the crackdown on teachers and students continues. Some of this year's freshman class returned to Beijing University over the weekend. They're the ones in uniform, guinea pigs in the government's experimental attempt to create the perfect communist student. The entire class was shipped off last fall for a year of military discipline and Marxist indoctrination.
The lid has been slammed down, and I think it's going to stay there for a while.
And if a year in the Army makes obedient students at Beijing University, the government plans to do the same at other schools, producing a generation of scholars trained not to think for themselves. John Sheehan, CBS News, Beijing.
In this country, one federal health expert called today for a ban and another for tight restrictions on the prescription acne drug Accutane for women of childbearing age. They say Accutane is causing far more birth defects than maker Hoffmann La Roche acknowledges, and they say that the manufacturer has failed to properly warn women. Hoffmann La Roche disputed the findings, but said it would strengthen its Accutane warnings and education program.
Can a healthy diet, including Mazola, bring cholesterol down? Here's living proof.
When I found out my cholesterol was over 200, I got nervous. So I cut back on saturated fats and cholesterol and used Mazola.
A clinical study showed that a lower fat, lower cholesterol diet, including Mazola, reduced cholesterol an average of 17%.
With Mazola's help, I got my cholesterol down. I can live with that.
Mazola. Together we're beating cholesterol.
Jake and Blake awake to Kellogg's Oat Bake.
Jake?
Yes, Angel Cake?
Why is it milk you forsake when you partake of oat bake?
I love Oat Bake straight. Does that aggravate?
No, no, my little potentate.
May I demonstrate?
How considerate. Raisins, nuts, and spices predominate.
So you appreciate?
Well, I didn't anticipate that a cereal straight would taste so great.
In milk or straight, Oat Bake tastes wonderful.
Huh?
I mean great. Oat Bake tastes great.
First rate.
Is this decaffeinated?
Relax, it's Max.
Tastes so rich.
Relax, it's Max.
Decaffeinated?
Relax, it's Max.
It's so rich you can't believe it's decaffeinated? Relax, it's Max. Maxwell House Naturally Decaffeinated, blended with Colombian beans, because better beans do make better coffee.
Relax, it's Max.
Maxwell House Naturally Decaffeinated Coffee.
It's so good.
It's that time of year again in La Crosse, Kansas, when folks gather to talk about times gone by and celebrate their passion. A nasty item that sparked many an Old West prairie war. Bob McNamara reminds us of our past.
The Devil's Hat Band is what old cowhands called barbed wire. And strung from the Rio Grande to the Columbia River, the scourge of cattle country was the end of the open range.
It was an unnecessary evil. If it hadn't been for barbed wire, there'd still everything be running loose.
It was really the backbone of the settlement of the West.
But barbed wire was vicious stuff, as menacing as serpent's teeth. And yet they worshiped the wire in a Kansas prairie town every spring.
Be nice if this old wire could talk.
It is another gathering of barbed wire collectors, people from all over stuck on having or trading all kinds of wires.
Well, you can have a little bit of history. You've got a little bit of history right there in your hand.
They are relics from the 1870s and 80s, the Dodge Star, the Hodge Spur, and hundreds of others. They sell for anywhere from $1 to hundreds. The lines telling of times when the West wasn't a kind or gentle place.
Back then, they thought the meaner the barb, the better it would be and the most popular, but that's not necessarily so.
This is a $30 wire, and this is $30. This we don't know.
Yeah.
They chisel a bit.
That's buffalo wire.
And swap from car trunks. Rusty old wires stitched with memories of fencing the ranch.
It was a job that I didn't ever like either.
Why not?
Well, of course, we didn't have money enough to buy new wire. And you go and stretch up a quarter of a mile of old wire and have it break down the ways, and you go down and splice it and come back and stretch it again, and it got darn tiresome.
But today, old-timers worry theirs is a peculiar passion with a thorny problem.
Our inability to interest younger people in this hobby.
We don't have the young like we used to.
The sight of 12-year-old Sarah Kay starting a collection was encouraging, but it's a mirage. Today, it's mostly old men who knew barbed wire most, the ones who felt its sting, wore its scars, and cursed its work. The ones who call it the sculpture of the Old West. The ones now worried its true appreciation may pass away, not pass on. Bob McNamara, CBS News, La Crosse, Kansas.
Part of our history and part of our world tonight. Dan Rather for the CBS Evening News. Don't forget CBS This Morning, tomorrow morning. I'll see you tomorrow evening. Good night.
Smith.
And I'm Paula Zahn. Tomorrow, Barbara Hershey on her new television movie.
Also, Perfect Strangers, Bronson Pinchot, tomorrow on CBS This Morning.